The Beaches podcast is going to give you everything you want to know about a beach before you go there. I hope you enjoy the show. Be sure to check out our website, www.sandee.com. Without further ado, let's get into the show.
Ready to dive into something a little different today?
Always up for a deep dive. What do we have?
Well, get this. Michigan beaches.
Michigan, huh? Now, that's not the first thing that springs to mind when I think beach vacation.
Right. Our listener this time is way ahead of the curve. They sent over some fascinating research on planning a Michigan beach getaway. Looks like we're trading in those autumn colors for some sandy shores today.
All right, I'm intrigued. What makes Michigan beaches so special? They're not exactly known for their coastline.
That's where it gets interesting, right? We all know Michigan for its cars, its music, maybe even its cherries.
Don't forget the Wolverines.
Of course. But beaches, this is where our deep dive gets really interesting.
Okay, you've got my attention. Lay it on me. What's the inside scoop on Michigan beaches?
Well, our listeners' research highlighted a few things. First off, the Great Lakes.
Ah, okay. So we're talking freshwater beaches. That already changes things up a bit.
Huge difference. And apparently the sheer size of the Great Lakes creates this experience that's kind of like being on the ocean, just without the salt.
Like a mini ocean in the heartland. I like it. But I bet that comes with its own set of unique considerations when planning a trip.
Exactly. And that's where our listeners' research took a turn for the, shall we say, practical.
Practical, huh? Like,
Yeah.
what's the deal with Michigan beach essentials?
Well, for one, the weather. Apparently the Great Lakes can be a bit temperamental. We're talking sunshine one minute, hailstorm the next.
Whoa, hold on. Hailstorms. On the beach.
That's what I thought. You definitely don't see that on the postcards. Packing for every season is a must, it seems.
Okay, that's wild. I'm starting to see what you mean about Michigan beaches being a bit different. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. Our listener also had a, how should I put this? A delicate question about Michigan beaches.
Don't hold back now. This is a deep dive.
Right. Well, they were curious about nude beaches, the legality of it all, and if it's actually a thing people do in Michigan.
An inquiry into the, shall we say, own a natural side of Michigan beach culture.
Exactly. They wanted to know the rules and what to expect.
Got it. Well, legally speaking, nudity on public beaches in Michigan is generally not allowed. Pretty straightforward. However, like with many things, there can be a difference between what's written in the law books and what actually happens, right?
Right. So what's the reality? Is this something people do?
It's definitely not as prevalent or openly discussed as it might be in other areas. Let's put it that way. And to be respectful of our listeners' privacy, we won't dive into specific locations here.
Of course, discretion is key.
Absolutely. But for anyone interested in exploring this further, discreetly, of course, on-the forums dedicated to naturism could be a good starting point, always remembering to be respectful of local customs and regulations.
Good advice. Okay, so we've covered unexpected hailstorms and, well, a different side of beach culture. But what about the overall vibe? What can our listener expect when they set foot on a Michigan beach?
Here's the thing. Michigan beaches are truly a hidden gem. They have a unique charm that really sets them apart. For example, did you know that the Great Lakes are home to the piping plover?
A piping what now?
It's a tiny shorebird, and it nests only on Great Lakes beaches. It's pretty special.
Wow, see, this is what I love, always something new to learn.
Exactly, and that ties back to what we were saying about the freshwater ecosystem. It creates a completely different environment, which in turn attracts different species, like the piping plover. It's fascinating.
It really is. Okay, before we wrap up, there's one last thing our listener mentioned that I have to bring up. Michigan cherries. Turns out, cherry season often coincides with the best beach weather in Michigan.
You're right. Imagine that. A day spent swimming and sunbathing on a beautiful Great Lakes beach, followed by a snack of fresh, juicy Michigan cherries.
The perfect way to top off a day at the beach. And you know what else screams Michigan?
Let me guess.
Cars. You got it. Imagine cruising down a scenic road along one of the Great Lakes, top down, on your way to one of these amazing beaches.
Sounds idyllic.
It does, doesn't it? So here's a final thought for our listeners. What classic car would be your ultimate Michigan beach trip ride?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So many choices.
I know, right? Let us know. Until next time.
Happy beachcombing.
Thanks for listening to the show, and be sure to tune in next week for your favorite episode about some of the best beaches and beach information in the world.